Taylor Swift writes joy in 8 different ways. It can be the electricity before anything happens, the rush of being seen, the noise of a room moving together, or the relief of not having to perform at all. It can even sit beside grief. So here's our listening question. What kind of joy is this, and what is the song doing to make us feel it? That answer matters because the catalog does not form a clean ladder from teenage excitement to adult calm. The early modes keep returning. Quiet contentment appears beside spectacle. Memory can sound brighter than the present. A performer can create exhilaration while the narrator is hurting. Taylor does not graduate from one kind of joy and replace it with another. She keeps enlarging the emotional vocabulary. Start with debut and our song. The writing turns ordinary details into a private system, a ride, a familiar place, a small routine. None of those objects is automatically dramatic. The song makes them dramatic by treating recognition itself as the event. The narrator notices that two people have built a language out of things other people would miss. Joy arrives through attention. This is a technique the catalog keeps returning to. She rarely asks a general word like happiness to carry the scene. She gives the feeling a location, an action, and a tiny piece of evidence. Notice the move. We do not receive an abstract announcement that this is exciting. We receive the detail that makes the excitement believable. Fearless expands the same engine into motion. The emotional center is not secure arrival. It is the decision to step toward a moment before certainty exists. Weather, movement, and physical risk make anticipation feel kinetic. The narrator is happy because the future is still open. Uncertainty is not a flaw in the joy, it is the voltage source. Listen for the sequence. First a scene, then a bodily choice, then the emotional name. That order lets the listener experience the feeling before the song explains it. That is why the early songs should not be dismissed as immature versions of later work. They are precise studies of possibility. They understand that anticipation can be its own complete emotional experience, even when no permanent ending follows. So that is anticipation. Now joy gets physical. The next mode is exhilaration, joy written at the speed of the body. Here, Taylor often lets syntax, rhythm, and accumulation do the teaching. One detail arrives, then another, then another. The song feels as if it is discovering its own excitement faster than the narrator can organize it. Enchanted stretches anticipation until it becomes almost architectural. The room, the encounter, and the imagined future all grow larger because the narrator keeps revisiting the moment from new angles. Repetition does not merely restate the feeling. It simulates a mind that cannot stop returning to the same possibility. 22 changes the scale. The pleasure is social and deliberately temporary. It is not trying to prove that confusion has vanished. The song makes room for contradiction, messiness, and being unserious with other people. That matters because community joy is not just romance with more characters. It has a different grammar. The group can dissolve pressure that the individual cannot. Long live makes community feel ceremonial. The central perspective is a we. Triumph matters because it can be remembered together. The song turns achievement into a shared story that anticipates the day when the people inside that story may need the memory. Joy becomes an archive. Those songs demonstrate another recurring craft move. Taylor often writes the listener into a room. Pronouns widen. Images become collective. A chorus starts to feel less like one narrator reporting an emotion and more like an invitation to participate in it. That is why these choruses work in crowds. The writing has already converted private experience into shared grammar before an audience ever sings it back. But exhilaration is not proof of lasting happiness. I can do it with a broken heart makes that distinction impossible to ignore. The performance energy is real. So is the pain beside it. Competence, applause, speed, and brightness can produce a joyful experience for an audience while the narrator's emotional condition tells another story. Here's the distinction to keep. Upbeat production does not certify uncomplicated joy. A joyful mode can be performed, borrowed, or built under pressure. The song can create exhilaration without pretending exhilaration has healed everything. That brings us to time. Taylor also writes joy in retrospect. Sometimes the happy song is not about possessing a moment. It is about finding a way to value a moment after it has ended. Holy Ground is the clearest example. Its brightness belongs to memory and perspective. The song moves with urgency, but the narrator is looking back. That combination changes the meaning of the energy. The past is not restored. Instead, motion becomes a way of honoring what was alive inside it. Joy in memory needs 2 time frames at once. The listener has to feel the original experience and the later consciousness reviewing it. Taylor often creates that doubleness by placing vivid scenes beside a narrator who now understands their impermanence. The result is not simple nostalgia. It is pleasure with distance inside it. The Best Day broadens that technique beyond romance. Specific scenes of care become durable because the adult act of remembering gives them a second life. Again, the power comes from selection. The song does not claim every day was perfect. It chooses concrete moments that can carry gratitude. Happiness is an essential complication. Despite its title, it is not a victory lap and not a tidy adult ending. Its emotional achievement is coexistence. Good memories do not erase loss, and loss does not require the narrator to declare every good memory false. Joy becomes something that can be acknowledged without being recovered. The song lets incompatible truths remain present. It refuses the easy choice between idealizing the past and condemning it. Holy ground is bright because it looks backward. Happiness is generous without being happy in the ordinary sense. Earlier excitement can return as memory, and later reflection can protect the value of that excitement instead of correcting it. So when a Taylor song feels joyful, time matters. Is the narrator inside the moment, running toward it, or reconstructing it from later knowledge? The same image can carry anticipation in one song and remembered tenderness in another. Joy changes when the camera moves. Try that test on any memory song. Separate what happened then from what the narrator can understand now. The emotional distance is often where the joy lives. Now, notice what happens when the pressure is not over, but the narrator moves anyway. This mode is resilient self-possession, joy as the decision to re-enter your own life. New Romantics does not deny disappointment. It converts damage into movement, style, and renewed participation. The pleasure comes from refusing to let disappointment define the available future. This is not carefree happiness, it is resilience with a beat. Bejeweled uses visibility in a different way. The theatrical surface matters, but the deeper turn is self-recognition. The narrator remembers her own capacity to command attention. Public sparkle becomes satisfying because it follows an internal decision not to disappear. Karma pushes toward consequence and security. Its pleasure comes from no longer being governed by an opponent. The narrator does not need every conflict to be repaired. The joy is the feeling that life can continue, and even tilt toward comfort without permission from the person or force that caused the pressure. These songs are useful because they keep agency separate from denial. Taylor's resilient joy usually works best when the song admits the bruise, the slight, or the instability that made resilience necessary. If the obstacle vanished from the writing, the triumph would lose its shape. Long story short compresses that lesson. Survival is not presented as a grand final transformation. It is a change in attention and scale. The narrator can recognize what deserves energy, what does not, and where a smaller, steadier form of safety might exist. But self-possession is not automatically solitude, and spectacle is not automatically shallowness. Long Live locates strength in a group. Bejeweled locates it in visibility. Sweet Nothing will locate it in privacy. Taylor's writing does not force those solutions into a ranking. Different songs answer different pressures. That plurality is the point. Joy can be a crowded room, a shining public entrance, or the moment an old conflict stops controlling the narrator's imagination. The craft question is always specific. What pressure is being released, and what action makes that release audible? The obstacle gives the pleasure its contour. Remove every trace of pressure, and resilient joy becomes generic confidence. Keep the pressure visible, and the release feels earned. From there, shrink the frame. The quieter mode is chosen intimacy and domestic contentment. New Year's Day turns away from the public peak and studies what remains after the room empties. Care is measured through ordinary continuation. The song finds emotional weight in the work that happens after spectacle, when there is no audience left to reward it. Paper Rings is much louder, but it makes a related choice. Playfulness strips status from the symbol. The narrator values commitment enough that luxury becomes optional. The exaggerated bounce does not make the feeling less serious. It is the form seriousness takes when the song refuses solemnity. Sweet Nothing is quieter still. Its central relief is a domestic space where the narrator is not being asked to produce. Contentment becomes the absence of demand. The technique is subtraction. The stakes do not disappear, but the song narrows what counts. A small room, a repeated task, a familiar person, or a protected routine can become sufficient. Instead of making the world bigger, the writing makes attention more selective. Peace prevents us from calling that selection a settled ending. Devotion exists beside a question about whether devotion can protect another person from the conditions around the narrator. The song offers intimacy without promising that intimacy solves exposure, anxiety, or cost. That tension makes the quieter joy more persuasive. Contentment is not the absence of conflict. It is an act of noticing and choosing inside conflict. The narrator can value refuge without claiming refuge is total. You Are in Love studies recognition from the outside in. Its observer narrator notices small patterns rather than relying on a single dramatic declaration. Once again, Taylor builds emotion from evidence. This is the bridge back to debut. Our song and Sweet Nothing are separated by years and very different sonic worlds, but both understand that intimacy can live in ordinary details that outsiders might overlook. Later, restraint does not replace early sparkle. Both rely on attention. So the surface changes, but the craft principle stays recognizable. Choose the detail that proves why this particular joy matters to this particular narrator. And then the catalog doubles back. That is the final lesson. So high school deliberately returns to adolescent idiom and giddiness late in the catalog. That is not a failure to mature. It is evidence that youthful exhilaration remains an available expressive register. An adult narrator can still choose the comic scale, the rush and the awkward specificity of a crush song. Daylight sounds like an arrival, but its strongest move is not declaring the past meaningless. It changes the metaphor through which the narrator understands love and attention. Joy is a reframe, not an erasure. That return matters because readings that order the albums from giddy to settled miss how often the modes recur. Later songs can choose teenage-scale exhilaration. Earlier techniques can reappear inside quiet domestic writing. Brightness can still sit beside pain. No one label exhausts a song. These are listening tools, not boxes. That gives us a better way to hear Taylor Swift's joyful writing. Do not ask whether the song proves that the hard part is over. Ask what the joy notices, what it survives, what it remembers, what it chooses, and who it invites into the room. Taylor does not write joy as one destination. She writes it as evidence that life is still available in more than one form.